Ancient Rome, the greatest state of the ancient era, had many institutions of power, many of which, at least in principle, have survived to this day. But there is one interesting fact. In Rome there was not even an approximate analogue of the city police. By the way, there were no firemen either, if we mean professionals, whose service is to fight fires. The situation was handled in proportion to one's wealth. The well-to-do often had some kind of analogy to fire departments made up of slaves. In the case of fire, the ordinary Romans had to rely only on their neighbors. It is true that there were amusing precedents. For example, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, created the first fire department of his slaves, after which he became known as a benefactor and philanthropist. In fact, his firemen immediately tore a burning house to pieces, even though it could have been saved. And then Crassus simply bought up real estate at bargain prices. But back to the crime situation. Its level in Rome at the turn of the millennium was quite high. Prior to the 1st century AD, there was no law enforcement service in the city, and everyone had to worry about their own safety. Daredevils, daring to make a night hike through the narrow and winding Roman streets, had to arm themselves or take a guard with them. The lack of lighting in the streets only made it easier for the robbers. Theft, robbery, extortion, counterfeiting of liquor and jewelry flourished in Rome. Powerful gangs could keep entire areas of the city under their control. According to Juvenal, the victim of a night attack should have been happy if he had at least a couple of teeth left. As they left home, the Romans carefully closed their shutters and locked the door. Shopkeepers additionally covered windows and doors with chains. There are many ancient Roman locks in museums which show evident traces of burglary. With malefactors tried to struggle also with the help of magic. Trade in special curse tablets flourished in the city. There are few extant records of political confrontation accompanied by a struggle between bandit groups. For example, the plebeian tribune Clodius amassed squads which he used to intimidate, pillage, and murder political opponents. One of his victims was Cicero, whose estate was looted. Belonging to the radical populists, Clodius attacked the oligarchy of the Optimates, encroaching even on Pompey, who was afraid for this reason to leave the house. Cicero's fellow optimist Milan, concentrating gladiatorial gangs around him, fought back against Clodius. At a time when Milan had solicited a consulship and Clodius a praetorship, their factions staged battles in the streets of Rome. During the reign of Augustus, Rome established a number of power structures to ensure order in peacetime. These included the Praetorian Guard, the city cohorts, and the vigiles. The latter were most similar to the modern police force. The vigiles were organized into cohorts according to the army model. Each city district was assigned its own unit. Besides ensuring public order, vigiles became firemen and were equipped with water pumps and other things needed in such cases. Each cohort was headed by a prefect, who was the police chief of the district. Initially, the vigiles recruited all comers, including foreigners and freedmen. The main prize was Roman citizenship, which a policeman received after 6 years of service. I'm not sure about the pay, but the fact remains that often an encounter with such a patrol meant no less trouble for a late traveler than for a robber. Subsequently, Emperor Tiberius undertook a radical reform of the police service, which raised its prestige dramatically. It was no longer easy to get into the police force, but the officers were much better off than the same legionnaires. The quality of work had also improved, at least when people saw a patrol in a narrow street they did not run away at the drop of a hat. The main instrument of retaliation or performance during the royal and republican periods was private revenge, in an eye for an eye, Italian, mode. Unlike in many other states, in ancient Rome the institution of private revenge was at a higher stage of development and was partly enshrined in law. Over time, attempts of the Roman authorities to switch from vengeance to fines, compositions, paid by offenders for the benefit of those affected by torts can be traced.